Two of the hottest entertainment properties so far this year, The Last of Us and the Super Mario Brothers movie, were of course based on video games. And hey, what about the Walking Dead comic book series becoming an awesome TV show and game series as well? Well, I thought it would be an intriguing discussion to explore the world of cross-media entertainment with my next guest, none other than David Alpert, or DA, CEO of Skybound Entertainment, the creators of Invincible and The Walking Dead and others. Hey DA, thanks so much for joining us today.
Mark, thank you so much for having me on.
Pleasure. Hey, before we talk about the popularity of cross-media entertainment today, tell us a bit about Skybound.
So Skybound is a creator-focused, multi-platform entertainment company. We do everything from comic books and video games to film and television shows, merchandise, podcasts, and more. We own and operate over 150 IP, or intellectual properties, but our biggest ones would be The Walking Dead, Invincible, and Impact Winter.
Wow. So you produce this show, The Walking Dead, for example, for AMC, and that's based on a comic book. Was that your original intellectual property as well?
Yeah, so my business partner, Robert Kirkman, created The Walking Dead.
Of course.
So Skybound, our company, publishes a comic book, The Walking Dead. We produce the TV show. We make, develop, and license and publish video games. We've done everything from, we've had a cruise based on The Walking Dead. We've had The Walking Red wine. We've had Walking Dead bourbon. I've made samurai swords and baby onesies.
Both ends of the spectrum there. All right. So games that become TV shows or movies, as I touched on off the top, it really can be hit or miss. Let's face it. I'm so happy to see that this year, both The Last of Us and Super Mario were examples of cross-media entertainment done right. How do you think they achieve this?
Well, I think, first of all, we're living in an age where the technology that's involved in making these shows and movies is just absolutely mind-blowing compared to where it was before. So, it used to be let's say in the 90s, if a movie had, let's say, 200 VFX shots or visual effects shots in there, that was a massive blockbuster. That's like a Jurassic Park type movie. Today, a little indie might have 400 to 500 shots, and a big franchise movie like Super Mario is probably thousands and thousands and thousands of shots, right? So just the sheer volume of the amount of computer work that we could put into a film and TV show is just mind-blowing compared to previous eras. So what that does is it allows things like zombies and monsters and animations to sort of just be at a much higher level. So I think that's part of it. But I also think that, as video games themselves have sort of progressed, you've gotten a richer world and a deeper tapestry to explore.
Because previously it was kind of like, well, just because you can license something doesn't mean you should.
That's right.
But it's funny because I think everything is a bit incestuous, or at least everything is influencing everything else. So I would argue that The Last of Us video game was probably influenced by The Walking Dead. And then in turn, The Last of Us TV show on HBO was kind of like Walking Dead in a sense. So I don't know how you feel about that. Is it flattering? Is it annoying when you see another IP, another intellectual property that maybe Skybound doesn't own? What's your take on, for example, The Last of Us and its success?
Well, honestly, for me, I'm a genre fan. I grew up reading like science fiction and fantasy and horror. And I never felt like I was a comic book kid and a video game kid. I always felt like those things were sort of on the outside. You were a nerd or a geek if you liked the things that I liked.
Yeah. And
whereas now it's like, I just love the fact that what formerly was shunned and, on the periphery is now mainstream entertainment, right?
Yeah.
It's everyone's talking about it. So like, the little kid inside of me is jumping for joy every time I go. I'm like, wow, there's all these movies and TV shows based off of the things and properties that I absolutely adore.
Yeah, fair enough. And then just going back to being influenced, it could be argued that The Walking Dead was influenced by Evil Dead, right? And Evil Dead was influenced by Night of the Living Dead, that kind of thing. So, I guess we all borrow elements from other influential pieces of content, but I've talked to some creators who resent when something looks too much like their own IP, but it sounds like you're good with it.
I would say there's two things I look at. One is, I'd say the only original thought was had by Adam, right? And everything else since then has been part of a conversation.
Adam, like Adam and Eve?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And so I feel like everything since then is part of this ongoing dialogue and conversation. So like some people argue in the zombie community, and by the way, there is a zombie community and it's very, very vocal. The zombie community says that, some people say Romero is really sort of the birth of the modern zombie.
Yeah.
And he is, except that there was a whole tradition of zombie stories and zombie movies that preceded him that he
Yep.
actually did his own unique take on. So,
Sure. And books and radio shows. I listen and collect old radio shows from the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they had stories about zombies then as well. They were tied more to voodoo. And so, yeah, I didn't know that it went that far back, by the way.
and again, I do think Romero is clearly the godfather of at least the modern era of zombies, and the way that it sort of divorces from sort of the Haitian voodoo rituals and sort of really focusing more on like cultural issues. And I always thought that was great. And I think Last of Us addresses that. I think Walking Dead addresses that. So by no means do we have a monopoly on the zombie genre.
Fair enough.
And the same thing like with Invincible. Invincible is very clearly our comment on the superhero genre and sort of the coming of age genre. Like, so we've taken very well-worn tropes and just have done them in completely different ways.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you've touched on the fact that games, for example, they've matured and they're not just, hack and slash or run and gun. There's some depth to the characters. I'm paraphrasing. But in terms of a business model, why do you think so many entertainment companies are now one bit of content and creating other content based on a game, for example? Is it because they have a better chance of being successful among gamers who are going to pay to watch that movie, even if it's not good? Like, is it just like a no-brainer?
I think we're in this attention economy, right? Where the signal to noise ratios are all out of whack. So trying to get something to cut through these days is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
There was a famous line where I think it was, one of the heads of Netflix was saying that they view their competition as Fortnite, right?
Sure.
And they view their competition as sleep. And I think that those things are all true, right? Where, growing up in the monoculture that I did in, the 70s and 80s, you look at that world and there was 3 channels, right? There's a couple local channels, right? But there, if there was a big game on or a big movie out, that movie would be in the theater for like a year, right? Like I remember going to see Indiana Jones in the theater, I don't know, about a year and a half, it felt like at least. And, today a movie, if it doesn't hit, is in and out of theaters in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So it's like just the pace of this all catches up. So then you have these massive budgets. How do you cut through? So people go for this term they use called pre-awareness. And I think for they look at like, oh, wow, all these people have invested in games. The same reason why best-selling books get turned into movies and TV shows.
Sure.
They're looking for some way to say, hey, people already are familiar with this brand. Mm-hmm. Why are they going to go over there?
We are chatting with DA, CEO of Skybound Entertainment. What would you say, DA, your most successful body of work is? Walking Dead?
I would say Walking Dead and Invincible. And I really have to put them both together because they really follow the same path. And ultimately that is the things that we were doing, no one had done at that time, right? So we talked, there had been plenty of zombie things prior, but no one had put on a serialized horror show on television. Mm-hmm. There had been anthologies, right? Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, etc., which I loved.
I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, by the way.
I went back and rewatched all the originals with my kids, and it was so awesome.
All 156 episodes?
We did. And the funny thing is, in the first episode, my kids go, "What's a phone booth?"
That's hilarious. You're referring to the episode called Where is Everybody? Where there's a guy walking around town and there's nobody there and it's freaking him out. It turns out he's in an isolation booth. He's an astronaut in preparation to go into space by himself for a long time and he snapped. So you don't know what's going on as the viewer until that little twist at the end. Yeah, so I'm a huge geek. I apologize. Off topic here, but I'm glad that you're a fan of that and Tales of the Crypt to a much lesser extent, but I'm a big Rod Serling nerd. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, no. Awesome. But I was just saying, so so Walking Dead, we were the first serialized horror show. And then with Invincible, we did this other thing where it's like we had an hour-long 2D ultra-violent cartoon, right? And people are like, no, it's got to be half hour, or it's got to be not so violent, or it's got to be 3D. We're like, no, this should look like that thing that you watched after school when you were a kid, except the characters are completely real. And the violence is absolutely insane, and it all ties back together. And so looking at finding what we consider to be white space and pressing the boundaries, how stories are told, that to me is, I would say, the most impressive body of work that Skybound has put out there.
Awesome. Congrats. With that in mind, when it comes to cross-media entertainment, what can others learn from Skybound?
Well, I think the main things that the sort of the best practices to take away from Skybound is, one, keep the creator involved, right? Having the creator be an active participant in the production is huge, because so often you'll find traditional media companies say, "Thank you, creator, for the great work you did. We're going to go reinvent the wheel over here." Mm-hmm. And that's time and time again. Really smart people make that error over and over. So I think that's one. And two is we really look at the media landscape differently. We're not really about making TV for TV's sake or making a comic for comic's sake. We're trying to build a connection between a creator and their fans across the brand, right? So people who love Walking Dead, some love the comic, some love the show. A lot of people's favorite character is Clementine, who comes an original character from a video game.
That was the Telltale series. That was so good.
It was our idea to sort of do. People came to us and said you should do a shooter. We're like, we'll do a shooter, but the core value of what we do is we're emotional, right?
Yeah,
so we wanted to make a game that made people cry. That was our goal.
Wow.
So
yeah, that was great. That was kind of like a take on the point and click adventure game genre that I was so obsessed with in the 90s, to the extent that I got into the industry 29 years ago. All right. It would be remiss for me not to ask you, DA, what's next from Skybound?
Well, the best thing for me is I've been working now. So, Invincible, because it's animated, has taken longer to come out, but we have Invincible season 2 coming out very soon. I'm already working on season 3, which is absolutely insane and mind blowing. So I can't wait for people to come see that. And then we had this huge hit that we did for Audible. It was an audio original, very much inspired by those 30 style radio shows that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Called Impact Winter. Have you heard Impact Winter?
No, in researching my interview with you, I saw the audiobook portion on your website, but I haven't listened to that. I definitely will, because I'm a huge fan of audio. The theater of the mind, audio entertainment. So yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, and it was a big hit for us. And we now have season 2 coming out this summer, which we're incredibly excited about.
Amazing.
And we're going to have a huge presence at Comic-Con because it's actually the 20th anniversary of both Walking Dead and Invincible this summer.
Wow. Just saw the CNN special, the 2010s, and they tipped their hat to The Walking Dead on AMC. I don't know if you saw that or worked with them on that.
No, that's awesome.
They were just saying how the network took a chance on a zombie serial and it paid off, much to what you were saying earlier. Okay, DA, so as we wrap up, where can we learn more about Skybound?
Well, the best place to go is republic.com/Skybound. We're actually in the middle of something called a Regulation A financing raise. So our SEC audited financials are live on the site. Videos about all our upcoming things are live on the site, and we're actually driving to our close. That'll be announced tomorrow, actually. So that's the best place to go, republic.com/Skybound.
All right, republic.com/Skybound. Good luck with that. And it should be noted, it's open to anyone to invest, by the way. So good luck with that. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead or other Skybound properties, then that could be a cool thing to check out. Really great to chat with you, DA. Thanks so much for carving out some time to talk. All the best. Continued success.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.